All right, so we're diving again today, and this time we're looking at how artists can use data, kind of measure their success, see if they're growing their audience, things like that.
Sounds pretty businessy for the art world.
It is, and that's what makes this so interesting. Our source material is this episode from Aburishaim Saba Radio with these two artists, Hideki and Mayumi.
I've heard of them. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, and they're trying to wrap their heads around these business concepts like KPIs, key performance indicators.
KPIs. That sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah, they were totally lost at first. Like, wait, what does this have to do with making art?
Right, because you think of art as this personal thing,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you've got spreadsheets and metrics.
Exactly. And they're so funny about it. It's like they wandered into a business meeting by mistake. But what's cool is they don't shy away from it.
So they try to figure out how to apply those KPIs to their art.
Yeah, and Mayumi, one of the artists, she actually already tracks some stuff. Like, how many people are listening to their show?
So she's already kind of data-driven,
Yeah.
even if she didn't realize it.
Totally. And then they start digging into different types of KPIs. Like, there's marketing KPIs, all about website traffic and stuff.
Makes sense. Got to get people to actually see your work, right?
Right. And then there's financial KPIs, which is all about, sales.
So, like, are you actually making money from your art?
Exactly. And Mayumi's really focused on growing her presence on those audio platforms, like Stand on FM and Spotify. So she's trying to figure out, okay, how can I use these KPIs to get more people to listen?
I'm curious, what kind of advice did they get?
Well, they actually turned to ChatGPT for help.
Wow, using AI for art advice. That's pretty cool.
I know, right? And one of the suggestions was to include clear calls to action at the end of their episodes. So instead of just saying, thanks for listening, they could be like, hey, subscribe to our channel or join our open chat group.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Make it super easy for people to take the next step.
Exactly. But then there's this funny part where they realize that Hideki's Instagram isn't even linked to the show properly.
Oh, no. They're talking about growing their audience, and they've got this basic thing missing.
I know, right? But to be fair, Mayumi does seem to get this whole audience segmentation thing. She has multiple Instagram accounts, each with a different focus.
That's smart. Tailor your message to different groups of people.
Yeah, she's definitely thinking strategically. And they also talk about the value of Hideki's art. He's sold to serious collectors.
So he knows his worth. Doesn't undervalue his work.
Right. And this Swiss gallery actually played a big role in connecting him with the right people early on.
So it's not just about online stuff. Those traditional connections still matter.
Totally. And toward the end, Mayumi brings up this idea of having more focused themes for different months.
Oh, interesting. Like curating their content more.
Exactly. And it all comes back to using data, using feedback to shape what they're creating.
So they're becoming more data-driven, but in a way that makes sense for them as artists.
Yeah, and that leads to a really fascinating conversation about community building, which we'll get into next time.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, right? Balancing the art with the business side.
For sure. I mean, you were just saying how Hideki sells his work to those collectors through that gallery.
Right, and then they start talking about building this whole online community, which feels kind of different.
Yeah, it's almost like they're comparing those two approaches, the exclusive gallery world versus something more open and accessible online.
And wouldn't a strong online community lead to more sales anyway? Like, couldn't they work together?
I think you've got a good point. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And that's where the data can be helpful.
Oh, you mean using data to figure out how to make both of those things work?
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
they can use data to figure out what kind of content their audience likes, what platforms people are using, even what time of day they're most active.
So it's not just about making art and putting it out there randomly. It's about being more strategic with the data.
Right. Remember how Mayumi was talking about the timing of her posts?
Oh, yeah, like whether it was better to post at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m.
It seems like a small detail, but even those little things can make a big difference.
Interesting. So data can help you see what's actually working and what's not.
Totally. And then you can use that information to adjust your approach.
So it becomes a kind of experiment. You have your creative vision, but you're also using data to make sure it connects with people.
And that brings us back to that whole community building thing.
Right, because a community thrives on connection, on people being engaged.
And data can help you understand what your community actually wants, what they're interested in, how they like to interact.
So you're not just putting your message out there, you're also listening to what the audience is telling you.
Right. And data can help you interpret those signals they're sending.
It's like data's the translator. It helps you bridge that gap between your art and what your audience is experiencing.
Love that analogy. So it's not this cold, hard thing. It's actually about connection.
Totally. And then they talked about the challenge of making those communities, actually sustainable.
Oh, right. That's where it gets really interesting, I think, because it forces you to think about what's the value exchange happening.
Like, it's not just about what the artist gives to the community, but what the community gives back.
Exactly. And that's where data can provide some really interesting insights, like what are people actually willing to pay for? What kind of support are they most likely to offer?
And what are their struggles? Maybe the artist can help with those.
Exactly. It's like data is giving us this window into how that relationship between the artist and the audience actually works.
It's so powerful. So much more than just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right. And that knowledge can help artists build a more sustainable relationship with their community.
Which ultimately leads to a better experience for everyone. It really feels like things are changing, moving away from that stereotype of the starving artist.
Right. It's not about struggling alone in a garret anymore. It's more collaborative now, and data plays a big part in that.
Artists have so much more control these days.
They really do. You don't need a gallery to find an audience anymore.
Exactly. And one of the things I talk about is this idea of audience-centric creation, like involving your audience in the process.
Oh, I like that. So it's more of a two-way street.
Exactly. And they're using data to make that happen, like using surveys and polls, even looking at comments on social media.
It's like data is this bridge between the artist's vision and what the audience wants.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, a bridge.
And the result is you get a stronger connection, more meaningful art, I think.
Because it's art that really resonates with people. It's not just, pretty to look at. It speaks to them on a deeper level.
Right, right. And it almost feels like artists are becoming more like entrepreneurs these days.
In what way?
Well, they're thinking about their audience almost like customers.
Yeah.
And using data to create things people actually want.
That's an interesting way to look at it. But it's not just about sales, right? It's about building relationships.
Exactly. And those relationships, they have to be built on trust, transparency, a real desire to connect with people.
And data can help, but it can't do everything.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It can tell you what people are clicking on, but it can't tell you why.
You still need that human element, the intuition, the empathy.
Totally. Data is just a tool. It's up to the artist to use it in a way that feels authentic, that aligns with their vision.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one thing you want our listeners to take away from this?
Well, I think the big takeaway is this. Don't be afraid of data. It doesn't have to be the enemy of creativity.
It can actually be a powerful tool.
It can help you understand your audience better, help you refine your art, help you create something that really connects.
It's about finding that balance between the data and your own creative spark.
Exactly.
And who knows, you might discover something new along the way. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.